Have you ever wondered why someone you once loved deeply suddenly feels distant? Why the fire that burned bright slowly dims, leaving nothing but routine and indifference? You give your heart fully, yet over time, it seems to slip away. Not because love disappeared, but because something darker was quietly at work. Dark psychology reveals that love isn't just about feelings. It's about perception, power, and emotional conditioning. People don't stop loving randomly. Love fades because the emotional dynamics of a relationship shift in ways most of us never consciously notice. Small patterns, subtle manipulations, and unspoken expectations slowly erode the connection. And by the time you notice, it often feels too late. This isn't just heartbreak, it's science. The human brain forms attachment based on reinforcement and reciprocity. When the balance is lost, when one person gives more than the other, when expectations go unmet, or when emotional responses are predictable, love begins to weaken. What we feel as fading love is often a reflection of unseen psychological forces that influence desire, attachment, and emotional investment. Once you understand these forces, you begin to see love not as fragile magic, but as a delicate psychological ecosystem, one that requires awareness, care, and balance to survive. If you've ever wondered why love isn't enough, why effort sometimes doesn't save a relationship, or why the person you adored slowly drifted away, stay with me. Because today, we're diving into the dark psychology behind why love fades and how to recognize it before it's gone. One of the first reasons love fades is predictability. The brain thrives on novelty and emotional stimulation, especially in romantic relationships. When a person becomes too predictable, too available, too accommodating, too familiar, the mind begins to respond less. The excitement diminishes, desire decreases, and what once felt electric starts to feel routine. Dark psychology shows that humans unconsciously assess risk and reward in relationships. Novelty signals reward, familiarity signals safety. But too much safety can be misinterpreted as complacency. When someone no longer challenges you, surprises you, or keeps you slightly intrigued, your brain begins to lower its emotional investment without conscious awareness. This is why small changes often go unnoticed at first. The late-night texts become fewer, the spontaneous gestures disappear, the intensity in conversations softens. Each shift is minor, almost imperceptible, but cumulatively, they reduce the psychological triggers that sustain attachment and desire. Love fades not because feelings vanish overnight, but because the mind stops receiving the stimuli that first made it crave connection. Understanding this early can help prevent relationships from drifting into emotional stagnation before resentment sets in. Another reason love fades is imbalance in emotional investment. When one person consistently gives more than they receive, the brain begins to recalibrate. Dark psychology explains that the mind unconsciously tracks fairness and reciprocity. When the balance is off, emotional attachment begins to weaken, not immediately, but gradually. Over time, the person giving more may feel unseen, underappreciated, or taken for granted. Their actions, once met with gratitude, are now expected. And as gratitude fades, desire often fades too. The brain interprets the imbalance as a signal that the relationship is less rewarding, reducing emotional energy devoted to it. Meanwhile, the person receiving more may feel less need to invest. Their brain perceives that their emotional needs are already met, so their motivation to nurture the relationship diminishes. This imbalance creates a silent feedback loop. One person overgives, the other underinvests, and love slowly loses its vitality. This is why effort alone cannot sustain love. Desire and attachment are not fueled solely by good intentions. They are maintained by balanced emotional exchange. Once that balance shifts, even small slights or routine behaviors can magnify dissatisfaction, further accelerating the fading of love. Expectations also play a hidden role in why love fades. When people enter relationships, they carry mental scripts, ideas of how their partner should act, respond, and feel. Over time, these expectations become unconscious benchmarks. When reality fails to match them, disappointment creeps in, often without clear awareness. Dark psychology shows that repeated small disappointments have a cumulative effect on attachment. The mind begins to interpret unmet expectations as a signal that the partner is less valuable, less reliable, or less desirable. Even if the person is loving and caring, the gap between expectation and reality can slowly erode the emotional intensity of love. This is why familiarity can feel like boredom, even when nothing objectively negative occurs. The brain craves novelty and reward, but it also craves acknowledgement and validation. If emotional responses feel automatic, predictable, or taken for granted, attachment weakens. Love fades silently, disguised as routine, without overt conflict. Recognizing this pattern is essential. The brain doesn't distinguish between small neglect and active harm. Both can reduce attachment if repeated consistently. And once these unconscious recalibrations happen, rekindling emotional intensity becomes far more challenging. Communication, or the lack of it, also plays a crucial role. Couples often assume that shared history, love, or habit will maintain connection. But dark psychology reveals that attachment is reinforced through consistent emotional signaling, through attention, curiosity, and responsiveness. When communication becomes surface level or mechanical, the brain receives fewer emotional rewards. Conversations lose depth, eye contact diminishes, and the subtle signals that trigger desire weaken. Over time, the partner who once felt deeply connected begins to experience emotional distance. Love doesn't vanish. It fades because the reinforcement that sustained it is gone. Another factor is emotional predictability. When a partner is always available, always forgiving, and always patient, the mind may start taking them for granted. The brain unconsciously assigns less value to their presence because their emotional support appears limitless. Paradoxically, consistent availability without boundaries can reduce attraction and attachment. Love fades quietly because the mind constantly evaluates value and reward. When novelty, reciprocity, and emotional reinforcement decline, even slightly, the intensity of attachment decreases. Recognizing these subtle dynamics early can make the difference between fading love and enduring connection. Love doesn't fade randomly. It diminishes because the subtle psychological mechanisms that sustain attachment, novelty, balance, reciprocity, and emotional reinforcement are disrupted over time. The brain recalibrates when reward diminishes, when expectations go unmet, or when emotional patterns become predictable. Understanding this doesn't make heartbreak easier, but it gives clarity, a rare kind of insight most people never notice until it's too late. The dark psychology of fading love teaches us a powerful lesson. Relationships are not just about feelings. They are about balance, awareness, and conscious effort. Caring without boundaries, overpredictability, and unbalanced emotional investment quietly erode attachment even when intentions are pure. Here's a quiet challenge for you. Reflect on your own relationships. Notice where emotional patterns have become predictable. Observe where balance is off or where small expectations are silently unmet. For the next week, try reintroducing subtle novelty, thoughtful boundaries, and conscious attention to emotional reinforcement. Watch what changes, not by force, but by letting the psychology of connection do its work. And if this perspective resonates, share it indirectly. Let it ripple. Let the people around you notice the shift without needing explanation. Sometimes the most powerful lessons in love are shown, not spoken. Keep observing, keep adjusting, and see how quietly love can be reignited or preserved when understood.